Welcome to Slumber Podcast Massacre with TNA. That's Tim.
That's Andy.
And this is a podcast about horror. Each week we're going to dive in to a different horror movie, from the celebrated classics to the obscure rarity that darkens the shelves in your local video store. This week we're going to be talking about the 1988 gem Sleepaway Camp Part 2, Unhappy Campers. Timmy, did you go to Sleepaway Camp when you were a kid?
I did. Camp Luther Haven, which was
church affiliated.
Yeah, and
Interesting.
And just as fun as it sounds, it was a great experience. It was speaking of the church angle, it was kind of weird. You know, we had this game called Romans and Christians.
Oh, damn!
It was a tag game where all of the counselors were the Romans. The kids would go running in the forest, and they were the Christians. And if you got tagged, you had to be brought back to base camp. And the only way that you could get back out into the woods to run around was to convert the Romans to Christianity.
What? Okay. That's you've knocked me off my feet. I was not expecting something like, I've never heard of something like that.
Right. And the really weird part was,
where was the camp located?
The camp was in Albion, Indiana, which was, you and I are, of course, based here in Chicagoland. Albion, Indiana is a little bit closer to Fort Wayne, so most of the kids there had these, like, slight drawls and, like, a little bit of more of that traditional Indiana background.
Yeah.
And it was on a lake, and it was very much removed from any sort of parental oversight. I mean, it was good old-fashioned. You got dropped off. You were there for a week. There were no cell phones. There were no, as far as I can tell, phones.
Yeah.
It
was a big deal using the phone at camp. Like,
yeah,
there's one.
And we never got to. So you wrote letters to your parents.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a good experience. And you know what's crazy to think about is, like, swimming lessons at these camps. I mean, if you want to, before we even get into, like, movie horror, if you drown in a lake, there's really no bottom there except for way far down.
Well, yeah.
So I mean,
you're small. Like, it's
right.
It's imposing.
Yeah, and I mean, thank God nobody ever did, as far as I know. But yeah, it was a really coming of age type experience where you got a taste of kind of what was really cool. What was really cool about it was that these counselors, looking back now, I'm guessing that they're probably, I don't know, they were probably college kids.
Yeah,
and so it's not like they're, pillars of society. I mean, they were good people, but they were young people.
Yeah, it's weird. At the time, you're like, these adults are watching over me. And then now I'd look back and be like, those were idiots.
Well,
they were idiots in charge of me.
There was one dude that was a cook, and I saw him one time just, like, straddle a 10-speed, and he just, like kind of slowly guided it back and forth underneath him as if he was writing. And I remember saying to my counselor, like, what's wrong with him? And I think he made reference to, like, maybe a little bit of overindulgence in hallucinogenics.
Wow.
And yeah. And
everyone was seeing God at this camp. Excellent.
Literally, yeah. So,
did anyone ever get murdered at your camp?
No.
Good.
But God, I wish somebody had made a movie about, if that had actually happened.
Well, guess what? They've made several. But the main one, well, okay. So we're jumping in. People are like, you're doing part 2? Yes, we're doing part 2. We figured if we were to do, like, a series, like, then you kind of handcuff yourself to, and what if there's bad movies in those series? So instead of just, like, doing things linearly, we're going to jump around a little bit. So boom, right into part 2 of Sleepaway Camp.
Sure. Because here's how it worked. When it's the mid to late 80s and you're renting a movie, these movies in general got such limited releases that, if you're 12 years old and you get your hands on one of these movies, it's not like you even had a chance to see the first one, right? Because it probably didn't come out to a local theater. If it did come out, on video, it's one of a sea of thousands of movies.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the second one that has a video box that's somehow more attractive or more appealing.
Yeah. Well, in this box particularly, I think on purpose, it's, the camper with Freddy's glove and Jason's mask and like a chainsaw. There's something else hanging off. Was there a chainsaw? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much like, these horror movies, right? Watch ours, please.
We made one, too.
We made one.
Yeah. And so, no, you're right. And that was literally a part of it. And it's funny, like, God, I even remember video boxes that, remember when the video stores would put, like, a piece of paper in front of a part of the video box if it showed something that had, like, nudity or, like, was too gruesome or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for any younger listeners, back then, there was no way to do any sort of prior research. You just went off of that box. And yeah, so you look at this box, you got Freddy's glove, you got Jason's mask, you've got an attractive camper.
Very attractive
who
camper.
might have been in the movie or might not have.
Yeah, I don't think that is
Yeah.
our lead actress, Pamela Springsteen.
No, she was just a model.
Yeah,
I'm guessing.
okay.
But yeah, so we picked out the second one. I watched that first. Did you watch the first one first or the second one first?
Well, I watched the first one first, but I knew the ending. So here's the thing with this show. These movies are very old. We are spoiler... There will be spoilers. We're not candy coating. However, we still recommend some of these movies you do go and watch. So the first one, we're going to get it right out of the way because it is important in the second one. The first one, it ends, you find out the killer is a girl, but she is a boy. Yeah, she's presented as a girl but was a boy. And now in the second one she's had a full transitional sex change, but it's the same character. But so I knew that watching the first one, and still the first one is fantastic. Like even knowing the end, it's already one of my, like it's vaulted up to the top of movies I love.
Yeah, and we literally just in what you just said, just unpacked a lot right there.
Yeah, we're just getting it.
No, but it's really what you said. It carries a lot of weight in the genre because that reveal at the end of the first film, where you find out that this shy girl that is ultimately the responsible for the murders is actually a boy, is widely regarded in the horror world and industry and franchise is probably one of the biggest reveals and most shocking reveals in all of slasher films. So yeah, you find out this girl is actually a boy, and then that leads us into the second film where, if I'm not mistaken, it's one of, I'm not going to say it's the only, but it's one of very few fully like post-op transsexual villains in film.
Yeah, definitely villains. I'd just say people who have had the actual surgery as well. And that was not a common thing in 1988.
And we're going to get into this a little bit later, but it just to kind of tease it real quick, it brings up a really interesting societal question, which is, did this movie, whether it be the director or the writer, did this movie sort of assume that somebody being a transsexual, a post-op transsexual, is somehow like a natural step towards homicidal behavior? I mean, I know what I just said is a huge leap, but what I'm saying is, and we'll get into this more later because there's a lot of like homophobia in this movie. There's a lot of gay slurs in this movie. Mm-hmm. A lot of that is
a nice, clear F word in there, just like said as casually as we said it in 1988.
It's true, and none of us are proud of it. But I mean, seriously, this movie came out pretty much in the thick of the very, very early stages of AIDS awareness.
Yep.
So there was this sort of hysteria and flat out paranoia, even on just not necessarily like an entertainment or a film level, but just in your basic interactions as a kid or a young person at that time. If you drink a can of Coke and then you pass it to your friend and your friend says, "Oh, do you have AIDS?" This is the environment that this film comes out in. So yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later too. But yeah, you've got this transsexual.
Well, I don't know if it's trying to paint her as you might be looking too much into it. I think they liked the female serial killer. It was easier since you've already done the reveal. They don't need a guy to play it, so they can just kind of plot that away and be like, she just had an operation because she was already the killer.
Right. No. I see what you're saying because I'll go back
Because they were like, we can get Bruce Springsteen's sister for this.
Right. Yeah.
Can we? It's just people can have sex change. Yes, that's what she had.
Right.
Like they didn't even know they existed.
Yeah, and nor did any of us know that Bruce Springsteen had a sister and that she
Exactly.
existed. But here she is, and so no, you
What a Christmas dinner that must be.
Right.
Bruce, how's the tour? Pammy, what are you doing?
Yeah. What have you been up to, Pam? What I know you're doing some film work. What's
What you playing?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
but so I hear what you're saying, and I think you're dead on. I don't think that there was any sort of slanted, sinister, homophobic intent in this movie. It's probably the homicidal tendencies probably don't come from the transsexuality so much as they do. Here is a child who was raised by a relative who sort of imposed their own will on this child and made them grow up as something other than themselves.
Yeah.
So that's an important point to state there that this.
See, I think that would have been cool had they done that. This movie feels like Solo. Like Disney had a property and they were like, what can we do with it? Someone do something with this.
But let me
It
ask-
wasn't like, I want to continue Angela's journey.
Right. But let me ask you
I wish someone had done that.
Let me ask you
But this movie's
though.
too funny for that.
And I don't mean to dwell so much on the first movie, but it is important. So let me ask you this: isn't that first movie like predicated on the fact that this girl is psychologically, or this boy is psychologically messed up because this family member raised them as a sex other than themselves?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's total abuse.
Right.
Whatever. Yeah. Yes.
So-
It's a result of abuse.
Right. So okay. So what we're getting at here is that it's not transsexuality in and of itself. It's forced gender confusion.
Right.
Okay. All right. So
Sure.
we've got that. So
Because it's said in this movie that in the opening they kind of recap the first movie around this campfire, and they say that Angela, went to this mental hospital and and that they gave her a sex change, and the one young Reaganite, in classic late 80s, like, yeah, our parents' taxes paid for it. Taxes are the worst. But I lost track of what it
no,
was.
but I mean, yeah. And first of all, who gets their sex change paid for by tax
Right.
dollars?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I was getting at. Like, we don't know that she wanted this.
Right.
So yeah, that could have been forced on her. This forced gender reconfiguration,
Right. So either
which
way,
could drive someone a little crazy.
and I think that we're kind of stumbling on the sort of bigger topic here, which is this. It's really the era that this movie came out in that it has that sort of a little bit paranoid feeling towards anything that's other than normal, and that we are supposed to buy that as a reason why somebody would be psychologically disturbed. Which, I mean, from the angle of a family member enforcing that on you, I suppose I can buy.
Yeah.
But either way, regardless of how we got there, we've got ourselves a transsexual killer.
Yeah.
And
But it's never it's mentioned, but that's never really brought up again. No one else knows it until they realize that's the person.
right.
But it's never, that's never a device that's used in the movie.
Well, and ironically, here we are, kind of questioning whether or not, there's this sort of issue that's tied to this transsexuality. When really, you're right, that isn't something that's driven home so much as we get our standard morality tale that was so typical of these movies, where regardless of this person's background, this villain's background, what this villain is driven by is this need to punish those who aren't following strict moral rules.
Right.
Which is, it's so funny how
Tim's offended.
It's so funny how that was just at some point or other presented in these films, and then the rest of them just ran with it. You know, this morality tale, like this is the catalyst for so many movies, that there is a character who is driven by this sort of, zealous need to have people, not do drugs, not have premarital sex, not, use bad language, whatever.
Right.
And this movie, honestly,
Well, I think, go ahead.
no, it's probably the most forthright with the morality issue.
But I think what this movie does well is it takes that and then makes it absurd. Because yes, it is like, oh, these people are smoking pot, like the shit sisters. They're drunk and high in the woods, and she burns them both alive. But then at the end, it's like, you talk too much. Now I'm going to kill you. Like,
right. When did that become a moral
Yeah, it suddenly
transgression?
devolves into any reason, really.
Right.
Which I think, like, as Slumber Party was trying, or was originally written as a parody, I mean, this does feel like a good parody of horror films. Like an arc like that, where, you go from serious, and then at the end, it's like, I got to choke you from the guitar string because you blab too much.
Well, and you bring up a great point there. Maybe what this movie is doing is saying, this is not so much a person that believes in this morality. This is a person that is driven to kill, and this is just a convenient way for them to justify it, even if it becomes as thin of a reason as you talk too much.
Yeah.
It's not.
And if she can, put this veneer of a happy personality over it, it makes it justified and okay.
Right, exactly. Like, I'm killing you because I should.
It had to be done.
Right. Because you talk too much. So,
Does she say that?
She
I feel
literally
like
does.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, no.
I couldn't remember if that's what it was.
No, you're right. No, that's exactly it. And
because that's at the end where the kills are just coming.
well, I think she's just sort of running out of commandments to break. Like,
Right. Will someone please idolatrize something? Idolatrize? I don't know how.
Yeah.
Whatever that.
Yeah, anybody a fan of Baal out there? Baal?
Excuse me.
Yeah, you better hope that you're not.
Yeah.
We've got in the midst of all this social commentary, we find ourselves with a really, really simple plot line and setup here, which is a camp with a homicidal killer. So it's not like we're in uncharted territory here, but what we are in is a place where you're just ripe for a massive body count. And this movie, probably more than anyone that I can think of just off the top of my head, is even adding kills that we don't even really necessarily need.
No, literally everyone dies.
Right.
Everyone dies.
Here's the thing. If you're at a summer camp and, like, let's say 10 people die, and then, like, maybe the next day there aren't a lot of people around, I'll just buy that. Like, I agree that there probably aren't a lot of people left. They're either dead or they've run away because people are being killed there. But this movie is like, no. We're going to show you. We're going to show you exactly what happened to every single
Right.
last one of them, to where by the end of the movie, you're just really getting almost like almost like stills of just dead people.
Yeah.
Just to say we didn't
Make character posters out of all of them.
Right.
Like,
There are no loose ends here. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that is something that I it's tied to that, where, because they reveal at the very beginning of the movie, this is Angela, she's back, she's the killer. So there is no suspense in the movie at all. There are some fantastic kills, but so there's no real reveal except for that, when at the end you do see the cabin this abandoned cabin she's been using, and yeah, she has every one she's killed set up in there. So that's like the only reveal the movie has. But even then, you kind of know how they've all died already.
Right.
You know?
And
So
let me ask you this question. There is no right or wrong answer here. When you personally are watching a slasher film, do you need that high body count? Do you feel like you've been cheated if you watch a slasher movie and there are 4 kills? Do you feel like oh man, that didn't give me what I want? Where's all the blood? Where's all the guts? Where's all the crazy? Do you feel that way, or do you feel like do you not need that?
I mean, I guess if it's like a slasher movie, 4 would be weird. It would feel weird. But if it's just like a horror movie, like Hereditary, like that came out last year, not a high body count in that, but it's terrifying. Like my jaw was open through half of that movie, just like staring in awe. So as long as it's keeping me engaged, the body count is not insane. But there are certain movies that, that is not, I wouldn't be like, that's in the same vein as, Happy Birthday to Me, like, or
right.
where it's just like, this is a movie where people die. Like that's the point of that type of movie, or Sleepaway Camp 2.
Okay. So you're saying like a movie like Hereditary that kind of banks on a little bit more style and finesse doesn't need that, but when you're talking 80s slashers, you want that body count.
Yeah. Like if it's done, like this movie was made for a little over $400,000. Yes, if you have a budget like that, you're not going to be bringing me the artistic edits that Hereditary's bringing. The lighting effects. It's going to be very bare bones. You're not going to have people considered for Academy Awards in it. Toni Collette was robbed for a nomination. Yes, in that case, you do expect a body count. But a movie like probably one we'll do in the near future, like Phantasm, not a high body count necessarily, but that movie is so crazy and there's so much intricacy going on in it, and like interesting new things you hadn't really seen before, then that doesn't bother me.
Okay, so what we're getting at here is that really, especially by this time, and this movie came out in 88. So by this time, you're 10 years on from Halloween. There's been a slew of imitators. There's probably almost like a subgenre that isn't even necessarily trying to wow you with innovation so much as they are just trying to entertain you with multiple crazy kills.
Well, yeah, and I think especially this movie, as you were saying, like we were probably more familiar with the sequel than the first one because of when the first one came out, how readily available video was. But by the late 80s, it was everywhere. It was so cheap to make. Everyone had everything. So these movies were very accessible to us. And they relied on those kinds of rentals and sales on video. Like putting the movie out was one thing, but like a movie like this probably relied on those video sales. You know what I'm saying? It's made for that kind of an audience. It's made for people who will be watching this at home with friends.
Probably multiple times.
Yeah. So it's not. So it's specifically the number of kills and the approach and attitude of it were probably because of the prevalence of VHS.
Right. So let's talk about one of the finer points about this film, and that is the setting, which obviously we've clearly established is a summer camp. What's really neat about this particular film is that it was actually filmed at a previously used YMCA summer camp. So I know that you had asked me earlier in the segment, but have you ever been to summer camp before, Andy?
Yeah, I was actually just going to mention because you said YMCA. I went to a YMCA camp, which at the time, I went to Camp Eberhart. It was in Michigan. I think it's on Lake Eberhart, I believe. But I didn't know... I wasn't aware of the YMCA's religious affiliation at the time. And I know they would do like a prayer before breakfast. And there was like a small chapel time. But growing up in Indiana, I just kind of thought that was a thing that happened everywhere,
Bow your heads.
Right. And it wasn't until there was one day at breakfast where, because we would goof off during the morning prayer, and the head of the camp like read us the riot act, like, this is a Christian camp, this is important. And I was like, wait, what?
Right.
I didn't sign up for this.
What about learning how to make fire?
Right. Can I swamp my canoe now? Did you have swamping the canoe, or was it called like sinking the slave ship? Like, what was the equivalent at your camp?
No. I mean, one time I was canoeing and I lost my oar.
Oh, God.
But, yeah, which is tricky.
You weren't up Schitt's Creek, were you?
It felt, I mean, it was Camp Luther Haven. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's the whole. No, I have nothing but love for Camp Luther Haven. If there's any fellow attendees out there.
It's a German word, Schitt's Creek.
Really, yeah, right. So let me ask you
But yeah,
this.
I loved camp.
So, you loved camp. You went to camp.
But
you went to a YMCA camp.
I went to a YMCA camp.
Did it look like this? Did it look like this movie's setting?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, like it was in the woods. There was one like main path that went to all of the activities, and the camp kind of ended on this peninsula out into the lake. That's where the astronomy and nature areas were. You just passed the archery range to get there. Wow, I'm like blowing my mind. I haven't thought about this camp in a long time. Actually went to camp there. Quick anecdote. Kid who was on the he was on a bunch of what Munchin Crunch? What was that popcorny snack called?
Okay. Oh yeah, no. Oh God, I know.
Munchin Crunch, I think, is what it was called.
If it's not that, you're right.
Because I want to say Bunch of Crunch, but that's the Nestle chocolate. Yeah. That's not it. But it's called like Munchin Crunch or something like that. This kid was in that commercial. He was in. I think he was also in like Terms of Endearment. If I'm getting that right, he was like the little boy in Terms of Endearment.
You went to camp with him?
He was at the camp 1 year. I went there like 3 years. He was there for 1 week. What a shit that kid was.
Did he kill anybody?
No, he didn't. And I shouldn't say what a shit he was. I would have also, because the counselors obviously like he was the hero of the camp. So you're like, fuck this kid. You know.
Wow.
And I do remember one time, like one of the counselors was carrying him around in the mess hall, and he fell and like hit his head on the concrete ground and split his head open. And some of us were like, good, yeah.
So there was attempted murder.
There was some attempted murder. I did see, some blood at camp for sure.
So both you and I have been to camp then. And
I'm a different person than that now. I would never celebrate someone's injury, regardless of how envious I was of their life.
Yours camp had astronomy. Mine had a Christian conversion tag game. But the long and short of it is
was your astronomy section just a cell that Galileo was in?
We didn't have an astronomy section so much as we did like you dug holes in the sand and then poured hot wax into it, and then maybe you threw a frog in there.
Oh God!
Well, I mean that wasn't intentional. Well, I mean that wasn't the purpose of it. It was to make candles, but maybe a frog got in there.
Right.
But the point is, when I watch this movie, it looks like my camp. It feels like my camp. It's not just like a back studio lot where they threw up a couple cabins and some dirt pathways. Like if you've ever been to summer camp, or if you haven't been, and you watch this movie, you might as well have been, because it really genuinely does have that feel. So they do that right. This movie absolutely nails the setting to the wall. I mean, it's great for that. So we've got a great setting.
Yeah.
We've got a high body count.
I will now. Let's talk about the actual characters, because I am curious about this movie. There are 2 children that go to this camp, and that's it. And the rest are counselors, because it really seems like everyone at this camp. There are 2 kids that are like 10 and 12, and then everyone else is 16 or older. Like the main cabin with all the girls, are those girls campers?
Right, no.
It seems like they should be counselors, all of them.
Sure. No, it's a valid question. This is clearly a camp for all ages. And by all ages, I mean 10 to like 29.
Right.
I'm looking at you, Sean. And your chest hair. But But no, there are some scenes. There are actually some of the craft scenes where there are a lot of other kids. They don't necessarily have speaking lines, but there are larger, I wouldn't call them crowd scenes, but scenes with extras where there are younger kids.
Lunch and breakfast.
But you're right. It is a little strange in that, typically camps have like their little kid camp, and then they have their tween camp and maybe teen. This camp is just, takes all comers.
Yeah.
So
these are mature women.
Right. Yes. And and you get to see that very clearly. No. So it's an interesting question because it brings up the topic of what do you need in a summer camp movie? Is it okay to just have a summer camp movie about counselors? The answer is obviously yes, because we're talking about Friday the 13th,
right.
which is a pretty successful franchise. So you don't need kids there. This movie goes the extra mile for whatever reason, and has all of these other, at least in extra roles, younger kids. And I'm sorry, I love this movie, but I have to say that it's to its detriment, because there are literally some parts of this movie where whatever level of quality has been achieved in certain scenes with more experienced actors just absolutely descends into like a Goosebumps level quality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love Goosebumps.
Sure.
But I'm saying aren't there parts of this movie
Disney,
that feel like
Disney Channel acting going on.
It feels like a TV movie in some parts, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think I guess for authenticity's sake, it's admirable that they would make an attempt to have these younger kids in the movie. But you're right, it is a little jarring to have people that are very fully developed, and we get to see that, alongside these younger kids. So the question is, is it a good move to have broadened that scope so much? Probably not. And there's a bigger reason, and that is this movie was filmed in Georgia.
Yeah, Waco.
Yeah, I find this sort of endearing, but the leads of this movie were cast in your major metropolitan areas, and they're fine. There's some good actors in there. We'll get to that in a second, but there's obviously some speaking roles. So I mean, they took a risk here. Some speaking roles that were filled by natives of Georgia. And you hear these wonderful accents.
Ad in the paper went out looking for campers.
I mean, it's been a little while since I've watched the movie, but I'm going to try to imitate it. There's literally a girl that says, "I want to go home. Let me go home." And it's like this very obvious regional accent. And there's several kids that have that. So I don't know.
And she's the only one who goes home.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. She just
guess
lives.
You really got. Yeah, you got. She is next door.
Yeah. If you're just complain enough,
because that's kind of the joke of this movie. Every time someone's killed, Angela's like, "I sent them home for breaking this rule," which sent them home just means they were talking too much.
Yeah, she sent them home to their lord. Right.
And
so speaking of these characters, though. These leads that we have that are more in that sort of teen, or what we're led to believe is a teenage range.
Yeah.
We have, I don't know, I'd like to think some really great performances. We have the voids filled that are standard for slasher movies. We've got our bad girl, Allie. We've got our final girl.
Very bad girl.
Molly.
Oh, yeah, Molly's not very bad.
She's our final girl. And then we have varying degrees between pious and, evil.
Right.
Or at least in Angela's eyes. And
none of them are bad. They're just goofballs. They're kids.
They're just kids.
Kids.
And
some fun at camp.
And it's
talking too much.
Because if there's one thing that God hates, it's, somebody that lacks the gift of brevity.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are some strong performances. Okay, Allie, our bad girl.
TC is the head counselor. That guy was great.
Well, yeah. Okay,
with the tightest mullet.
All right, let's talk about TC. Well, first of all, before we go any further, because I'm so fucking excited that you got this when we've discussed this movie in the past. Tell me about the character names.
Yeah, if you look at the character names, they are all like they were the hot stars of the 80s because all the characters, they're all mainly Brad Packers. Molly, Sean, Allie, Rob, Demi, Leah, Brooke,
Charlie and Emilio.
Yeah, Charlie and Emilio are the two kids.
Right.
That's what tipped me off. I was like, wait a minute. And I also, because Renee Estevez, who is their sister in real life, played Molly, our last girl. And I was like, oh, Charlie and Emilio, that these two kids that always hang out would be playing. So then I saw those character names.
And even Uncle John Hughes.
Dude.
Yeah.
Oh,
seriously.
Damn. All right. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
So
Uncle John, the head of the owner of the camp.
So you've got this weird, I don't know. Somebody was just having fun there, but yeah, literally all of the characters' names are based on popular 80s, mostly Brat Pack actors. So we've got that going for us. Yeah. But let's go back to TC.
Tom Cruise.
TC, I don't know if I want to talk about how great of an actor he is or his mullet first. I'm equally excited about both. Let's go with the mullet.
Mullet, yes.
Yeah.
It's like mullets suck. This is the exception.
It's pretty. You know when you have curly hair and you sort of brush it out and it looks like a doll's hair?
Yeah.
That's the mullet. That's the back of his hair. He's got this wavy, curly hair. Probably could have like an afro for days if he grew it out that way and wanted it.
Yeah.
But no. He opted for the mullet. I mean, it is 1988. And by the way, the mullets, there's nothing ironic about it at this time. It was literally seen as highly attractive.
Yeah, it was like, look at that hot guy.
Right.
Because of his haircut.
He has this like corn silk flowing mullet that is just, it's almost distracting. It's so pretty.
Yes. It is the most prominent feature. And he is an in-shape, handsome man.
He is. And especially,
but it is all overshadowed by the mullet.
And the only thing that kind of grounds TC in general is just that the actor absolutely fucking kicks ass.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that jokingly. Like, he legitimately embodies every single thing that TC is supposed to be, which is a dedicated camp counselor, but at the same time a camp counselor that sort of understands the kids will be kids,
right,
lets them do their thing, lets them work out their hormones and yada yada. But I mean, it's genuinely played by a guy, an actor, who just really brings a lot of just honest believability to the part.
Yeah.
So
he has just a moment with Angela in the woods. It's some weird thing where he says good morning to her and she walks by and he's like, "Good morning, TC." Like, wow, she didn't even say good morning. I don't know. I love that scene.
Right. Yeah, no.
That felt so natural. I was like, this guy's worked at camp before. He's done. This is his job.
Right.
He knows what's going on here.
Exactly. And I absolutely,
because they don't have a lot to work with.
No. And I defy anyone that's listening right now to watch this movie and try and tell us that actor doesn't absolutely just knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
He's great.
Yeah.
He's great. And that's what you find in this movie is that the performances are spotty, only because they're including some of the lesser experienced folks that are just from that area. But he does a great job. And let's circle back around to Pamela Springsteen. This is why she's successful in this role. And I'm going to say this about her. No offense to anybody that is of a slight build or maybe not 7 feet tall or whatever, but Pamela Springsteen is a petite woman, right? And not only is she playing a character that is willing to kill people, but she's willing to kill about, I don't have an exact body count, I don't know, 15 people in this movie, maybe more.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's up there.
So how do you sell the fact that you've got this petite person of slight build and believe that somehow they could kill all of these people? But you just believe it, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, there's never a moment, you just go with it. There's never a moment where you're like, No way. I mean, the probably the most famous kill is Allie. She drowns her in an outhouse. And yeah, a person squirming, that would be very difficult, even if you were strong, to get someone in there, but with no problem. But because it's so absurd at what you're watching,
Right.
you just go along with it. It's fine. There are some kills you don't even see where you're just like, how did this, towards the end of the film, when you see Uncle John is dead and Rob is dead. Rob is a guy he's kind of Allie's hookup through the movie. His kill is the one I wanted to see the most, and you don't see it. He's hanging up in Uncle John's office with a sock in his mouth. You're like, wait, what happened here? How did this happen?
Right.
Uncle John's just sitting there with his hand cut off, but still, you're like, she overpowered both of these guys easily. She has no bruises at the end of the movie. Once. Molly hits her once.
Right.
That's the only damage she takes.
Look, I didn't take physics in high school. Or any
Smart
school.
move.
Right. But you don't just stick a sock in somebody's mouth while you hoist them into the corner of a room. Like, this is whatever she did to him, and this isn't the sock in the mouth kind of weird.
It's very weird. Why?
It's like
It's never he's established as some motor mouth, or someone said put a sock. Does someone say put a sock in it?
No,
I
that
don't think
would've
so.
made sense.
Right, that would have made sense.
Right. But I mean,
That
he's
was
sort of
probably-
bloated looking and like bloated in the face. 'Cause
Yeah.
like he choked on the side. It's, but honestly, there is a part of this movie where
Mick Foley came in. Mankind. Maybe it wasn't even Angela.
right.
That was just Mick Foley was at that camp, and I want to try something.
Yeah.
I got to finish her.
Yeah. You know what I've always wanted to do. But yeah, Rob, Mr. Sock in the Mouth, is actually a super likable character. Like, he's pretty like run of the mill. Like, I mean, he's just kind of an average guy. But Allie, let's just say it. Can we just go ahead and get this out in the open? She's hot.
She's very hot.
I mean,
there are only two for a slasher film with so much killing. Very little nudity in this movie, and there is nudity, a good amount of it, but really only by the actress who plays Allie. There's one other girl who flashes once.
Mal.
And
Is it Mal?
I think so.
Yeah.
And she gets killed by a drill carryover bridge episode. But yeah, she flashes. That's about it. Now, Allie's you see a lot, and thank God.
Right.
Because they're very nice and are of that classic. They just looked like a classic 80s. I'd seen that breast 100 times in movies in middle school,
And she is just kind of an 80s looking girl, isn't
very
she?
80s looking girl.
Like,
yeah,
she's got that blonde sort of just spiral.
If this were weird
perm.
science and I were to create a woman from the 80s, my mind would conjure Allie.
I wish you would do that.
I'll try. I can barely get this recording software to work, so. But there is one shot with her that is like, it's just quintessential 80s just exploitation, where so Molly is with Sean, but Allie's got her eye on Sean, so she's going to try and
make him jealous.
Like show him what he's missing. So she comes out of the pool, and there's just a great back-arching shot with the wet T-shirt, and had I seen this movie when I was 12, like, my brain would have memorized how far into the movie that was. I would have known exactly what time to sneak into a room to catch it on, like, HBO. Like, oh, Sleepaway Camp 2 is on HBO at 10 o'clock. I know at 10:22 I need to, like, sneak into the room just to catch a glimpse at that. Like, that's what that scene is. Like, that was pervy Andy as a kid.
I'm seeing it right
now.
now.
That encapsulates, you see the fire in my eyes right now.
And then you get, it's almost, am I right or am I wrong? It's almost better in the T-shirt.
Way better in the T-shirt. Yeah.
And I don't know, I normally I wouldn't say that, but it's just perfect. So yeah, we've got our bad girl Allie. There's a lot of other just varying levels of kid. I mean, I don't think this movie really goes to a strong effort to fill a lot of prerequisites as far as like archetypes and stuff like that. I mean, we've got our bad girl, we've got our final girl, and then there's just kids in between.
Yeah.
It's really sort of indiscriminate.
Then just kills. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, now we have to, someone come up with 15 creative ways to kill someone.
Right. And
Some of them work, some of them don't. I did not like when they do bring in the Freddy and Jason references. Those seem so forced, and there was no, like, at least there was no plausible setup. Not that that's important. I understand that. But like with towards the end when TC, he gets battery acid thrown in his face, but earlier he has talked about how his car battery had been stolen. That's a great bridge there.
Yeah.
That's a good setup for that. Like this Freddy glove is just like the guy, you cut to them in the woods because they're going to scare the girls. He's just searching around on the ground, doesn't see it. His buddy comes over, chats with him. The buddy walks away. He essentially turns around and just sees it laying there, like obviously in an arm though. So I'm like, no one's going to miss her laying there. Like,
right.
It's not, It's such a goofy, I can't disassociate myself that much.
Yeah, there's a person behind the glove itself, right? So, no, you bring up a good point, and it's fun to talk about because as you describe it right now, you're 1,000% right. I mean, it's silly, it's kind of baseless, but I remember watching this movie as let's say a 12-year-old, and that didn't occur to me at all. So it's
right.
It's, you know, what are you looking for in your slasher movie? Personally, I think for, like you said, if you're going to have some kills that are sort of anchored and make sense, then you should really kind of finish it out, right? You don't have to just fill it in with these sort of mindless
And I don't mind
kills.
an over-the-top creative kill where you're like, that's like stringing someone up and stuffing a sock in his mouth.
Right.
Like that, I'm still okay with that.
Right. And or even Allie's kill in an outhouse, just because, I mean, I don't think there's a human out there that would not be sort of repulsed at the idea of being drowned in an not just like a porta potty. I mean, we're talking like out in the middle of the fucking woods outhouse with leeches.
How old is the poo in there? Because they say that thing's been abandoned, like it's locked up. No one's used it.
I'm gonna agree.
It's probably just Angela's been using it. She just killed her in her own shit.
Right.
The thing that creeped me out more, I don't know if you thought about this, but before she gets stuffed in there, she does get stabbed. So while she's in there, that's what's going through my mind is, oh, that shit's getting in that open wound right now. Like,
right.
I know she's got leeches. Did not care about the leeches. I'm just thinking about her shit wound and how awful that must have been.
Yeah. No. It can't be good for an open wound.
No.
It's got to be like just the worst thing that you could rub on an open wound.
They recommend not doing that.
Yeah. Don't put shit. Although I just a weird tangent here. My grandpa one time went into his baby sister's room when she was crying, and he stepped on a like a diaper needle, and it went into his heel. And the first thing that his dad did was to pick him up and take him out to like a barn and shove his heel into a pile of shit.
Oh,
like I don't know why. I don't know how that. Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's good for a wound. I don't think being drowned.
He was not a doctor, though.
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not a doctor. So yeah, that might have just been a strange like impulse there. But no. But you know what's funny about that kill though, and I thought this is where you were going, but the stab in the back, like as we watch these movies and we see these kills over and over and over again, and there's so much carnage. Sometimes it's just like the smallest sort of, penetration of flesh that seems like the most painful. Or, like what do you do if you're, this character is in the woods and all of a sudden you get completely unawares stabbed in the back?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of scary. And
because that's not killing you immediately,
right.
But it's not absurd, like your face being split in two by a machete. You know,
exactly. You get your head chopped off, whatever, something like that.
Like this is a thing that could easily happen at any time. Just some crazy person's behind you and stabs you. That can happen, people.
Like you could just be like with your friend hanging out, and he's got a letter opener, and all of a sudden you get stabbed in the back. Like that would suck.
Right.
And so yeah, that kill is just top shelf, from beginning to end. So so here we have this movie that it does a lot of things right with the setting, with giving you what a slasher is supposed to give you, which is a lot of fun, inventive kills.
Yeah, this is not breaking new ground at all. This is retilling some used soil.
So, with even if it's among the things that we've already been talking about, what did you like most about this movie?
Man, I don't know, because to be honest, I was not that into it. But I think it was because I had just watched the first one and it floored me so hard. So, but in retrospect, I mean, I do appreciate the humor of it a lot more now, having thought about it for a while. Because, yeah, it is just, like, because this is a perfect time, 88, where, you don't need, there isn't a new thing you can really do. I mean, there is with Scream, but that's a so meta thing, and that comes later. And only Wes Craven could do that, So, but yeah, for just something in that genre, for what it is, which is just hey, we've got this property, we need to do something with it. It's a lot of fun. The kills are great, most of them. So yeah, I like the kills. I like the humor. I don't like the production value. I don't like the script.
Right. I would agree with that. It's, for me, it's like the unevenness. It's the fact that you have some scenes that are genuinely, for this movie's level, pretty affecting. I mean, there are a couple scenes between Angela and Molly that are sincere. And so I like those moments. We've talked about TC and the actor doing such a great job. So there are some really great things here. I mean, I'm not here to say that this movie stood the chance of being a Best Picture of the Year Oscar winner.
Sure.
But I think that it could have put on its editing hat a little bit more and cut out some of the stuff that's a little bit, I don't know, a little bit. It felt extra. It felt, I wouldn't say forced.
There were about 4 people too
just
many.
Unnecessary. Yeah. And so, no, I would agree with you on that. However,
the ending was awful. Like, I did not care.
It is, though, isn't it?
It's just, it just could have ended any time.
It's like they didn't know how to end it.
They did not know.
And so, no, God, I'm so glad that you said that because, yeah, and I do not want to detract anybody from watching this movie, but, yeah, that felt phoned in as hell. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's nothing even really to give away. It just kind of ends.
Right. Yeah, it ends with sort of like a kill. Another kill is about to happen, and then bam.
Maybe.
Yeah, right. So, like I always like to talk about when we're discussing these movies, how do you go about watching this particular movie? And I think we've kind of hit on it that this isn't one to be taken overly seriously.
No.
You sit around with a group of friends, and this is probably going to go for a good chunk of the movies that we talk about.
Sure.
But you sit around with a group of friends. It's okay if you talk over the movie a little bit, you crack a beer, laugh and joke about some of the stuff that you're seeing. It is a nice little time capsule to the late 80s. So if you want to watch this movie and you really want to enjoy it, I wouldn't take it too seriously. I'd just try to have a little fun with it.
It's one, if you're alone, you fold your laundry to it.
Right.
Like, you don't sit down and watch this movie.
Right.
Unless you just watched the first one and were so blown away, you have to sit down and see what happens. But there's no real bridge. There is another bridge. Sean, the Reaganite, his dad is the cop that arrested Angela in the first movie. You don't see that happen, but he does reference, my dad arrested her, and then his taxes cut off her ween.
Yeah, it was nice of them to kind of throw in. They kind of tried to bookend it a little bit there.
They're trying to build a, but then she cuts his head off.
Might have been like a decent place to kind of wrap the movie up somewhere around that time, but they go on for another 10 minutes.
And what a great bridge into the third. Like, now you've got a personal vendetta. Like, he's the son of the cop,
right?
His arch enemy. But
no. It's they didn't think that part through, but it's okay though because.
How did they not? Because they filmed 3 immediately after this. Like, this is some Star Wars. I have no idea what's coming next bullshit.
And by immediately, you're not saying like a year later. Like literally, when they wrapped filming on this movie,
right.
They filmed the third one, which I haven't seen actually.
I haven't seen it either.
But I do think that you should see the second one. I mean, this is again, you can watch this movie in the dark by yourself without any fear of anything. I mean, it's goofy, it's a good time. If you're having like maybe a Halloween party and you want to throw something on in the background,
this
is perfect for that.
Perfect.
This would be great for that.
Yes, you do not have to pay attention to it. It's all visual. It is all visual.
Right. It really is. Yeah. So here we have it.
That's a great at a party.
Wouldn't that be great?
Perfect.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there you go. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
And
there it is. 1988's Sleepaway Camp 2, Unhappy Campers. They were unhappy. There it is. Episode 2 in the bag. Please follow us on Instagram. We're Slumber Podcast Massacre on Instagram. You can email us any questions, suggestions. What movies do you want to hear covered? I don't know. Email us at slumberpodcast@gmail.com. You can now find this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We are hitting the big time, Timmy. So our next movie will be the fantastic The Funhouse. I'm blanking on the year. I think it was 82 as well.
Yeah, you're real close.
84?
Yeah.
83? It's early 80s.
1.
I know in the episode. I will know in the episode. The Funhouse. There's one low kill count. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Because that's what we do.
That's what we do. We talk about horror movies. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Timmy, have a good one, buddy.
You too, my friend. Love ya.